came out under his right nipple, deflected down, demolishing the large bones in his right wrist, then deflected left, embedding in his left thigh. It stayed there until it got to Parkland Hospital, where it fell out onto a stretcher intact.
U.S. Chief Justice Earl Warren is the bearer of the sad epilogue. The report of the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
On September 27, 1964, 9 months after it commenced its hearings, the Warren report proving Oswald's sole guilt was published. Jim Garrison said the commission could have saved the taxpayers' money because Life magazine had already reached that conclusion 8.5 months earlier when it published a cover picture of Lee Harvey Oswald posed with the weapons he used to kill President Kennedy and Officer Tippit.
The head of CBS, Bill Paley, had been involved with the CIA from the time that it was the OSS. He'd always been a loyalist to him. And CBS invested their own credibility in this at the very, very beginning. At the moment of the release of the report, they were in the middle of a 2-hour special backing the report before it had ever been released. They had produced it, they had it ready, they had the interviews done.
And they took him down to Dealey Plaza and they said, okay, Mr. Nix, where did the shots come from? Where did you hear the shots come from?
From a fence between the book depository and the railroad track.
Cut. Now, Mr. Nix, where did you hear the shots come from?
It came from a fence.
Cut. They finally pulled him aside, this man did, and pulled him aside and said, now, Mr. Nix, what did the Warren Commission say? Where did they say these shots came from?
From the book depository.
And they said, that's right, and that's what we want you to say. And I remember riding home with him. He was so upset. I mean, he would hit the driving wheel, the steering wheel, and say, why? I mean, they try and make me look like I'm insane. And I know that's where they came from. I know that's where the shots came from.
They didn't intend to publish the report. As Alan Dulles said, one of the top people running the investigation, the American people don't read. But as it turned out, some of us do.
Full name is Lee Harvey Oswald, O-S-W-A-L-D.
We had learned within days that Oswald spent the summer in New Orleans. I was still district attorney. So that meant I might have an obligation to look into him because I should find out what he was doing in New Orleans.
In New Orleans, Garrison discovered Oswald had been arrested for disturbing the peace by distributing Fair Play for Cuba leaflets, then went on television to talk about his Marxist philosophies.
These, then, are the differences between an outright communist country and countries which adhere to leftist or Marxist principles.
In your work with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, what are you advocating?
Oswald, a supposed Castro sympathizer, was working out of the offices of one of the most rabid anti-communists in New Orleans, Guy Bannister, a private detective and former Chicago bureau chief for the FBI. Also seen often in this office was David Ferry, another fanatic anti-communist and CIA pilot. An employee of Bannister's, Jack Martin, told Garrison confidentially that Ferry left his home the afternoon of the assassination in a thunderstorm to drive to Houston, then Galveston. Questioned by Garrison in 1963, Ferry denied knowing Oswald and said he'd gone to Houston to ice skate. Garrison turned Ferry over to the FBI, who released him with an apology. For the next 3 years, Garrison forgot about Ferry. During that period, it never occurred to him, a former military man who respected authority, to question the conclusions of the Warren report, until a chance conversation with Senator Russell Long in which the senator expressed his doubts about the integrity of the Warren report.
I recall my reply almost exactly. I think I said something in a state of surprise that, are you suggesting that there really was something more to it, that there might be a cover-up by the government? And his words were along the line of, well, that's a mild way to put it.
This chance conversation with Senator Long led to one of the most spectacular and ominous trials in New Orleans history. And it all began the day Garrison ordered 3 sets of the 26 volumes of the Warren Report and began reading them.
We had a copy in the car, we had a copy in the office, and at his home. And I'd pick him up in the morning, you know, he had a volume with him, read it in the automobile, in the office, at night taking him home. You know, weekends and Sundays and holidays, that's all he did. And I'll say this, he just about knew that 26 volume verbatim.
To show you how cosmically irrelevant the Warren Report is for the most part, to hide those little rare pieces of relevance. One of the exhibits is classified in the front as a study of the teeth of Jack Ruby's mother. Even if Jack Ruby had intended to bite Oswald to death, that still would not have been relevant.
In the Warren Report, Garrison discovered a New Orleans attorney, Dean Andrews, was contacted on November 23rd to represent Oswald. Garrison then learned this call to Dean Andrews came from a Clay Bertrand, and it wasn't the first time this Clay Bertrand would be supposedly helping Oswald.
Dean Andrews was paid for, was being visited by Lee Oswald with regard to some legal problems he had with his wife, Marina, and we found that the man who used the name Clay Bertrand was making the payments.
Informants told Garrison Clay Bertrand was also seen at the offices of Guy Bannister, along with Oswald and Ferry. Having established Ferry had lied about knowing Oswald and ice skating in Houston, Garrison officially but secretly opened his investigation.
We started digging into Oswald's background, his acquaintances, found he was being used and manipulated for some reason, dug back into those witnesses, and ultimately found ourselves dancing with the Central Intelligence Agency.
Jim went into what I call a tirade about the CIA, our CIA killing our president. And I had heard this so many times, and I was tired from my trip to Houston, and I really didn't know anything else to say, and I wanted to go home, and I just said in a down way, I said, Jim, if the CIA killed the president, there's nothing a chicken shit assistant DA from New Orleans is going to be able to do about it. And sort of resigned that I was probably going to get fired for that comment. And he started laughing in his wonderful laugh, and then looked at me and said, there's probably nothing a chicken shit DA is going to be able to do about it either.